Hello, everyone. First, I want to mention that you may notice there's a lot going on right now. People are experiencing a lot of symptoms, and it's probably going to continue through the month of June. So people are having headaches, digestive issues, wild dreams, and sleep patterns, and boredom. A lot of us are experiencing kind of this malaise, this boredom. So don't be alarmed if this sounds like you. While it is uncomfortable, it is all part of our awakening, and the awakening is picking up speed. So just wanted to mention that first to any of you that are experiencing those symptoms and maybe some others. So in this video, I'm going to lay the groundwork of understanding the spiritual, cosmic, and psychological aspects of working with the shadow and the psyche. I'm covering quite a bit, and it won't be possible to go fully into each area, but you can research and explore further into what might resonate for you. Try to hang in through the explanations of the main concepts, as they are necessary in understanding the shadow. My main references that I use are Carl Jung and Ra from the LAWOFONE, a good blend of spiritual and psychological. Let's begin with what is the shadow. So according to Carl Jung, a very popular and respected psychotherapist and psychiatrist and author, and who many of us consider spiritual, says that the shadow contains the hidden, repressed, and unfavorable or nefarious aspects of the personality. But this darkness is not just the simple converse of the conscious ego. Just as the ego contains unfavorable and destructive attitudes, so the shadow has good qualities, normal instincts, and creative impulses. Ego and shadow, although separate, are linked together in much the same way that thought and feeling are related to each other. The ego, nevertheless, is in conflict with the shadow in what is called the battle for deliverance. In the struggle of primitive man to achieve consciousness, this conflict is expressed by the contest between the archetypal hero and the cosmic powers of evil, personified by dragons and other monsters. In the LAWOFONE book series, there are similarities with Jung's teachings. The LAWOFONE explains the meaning of our cosmic existence through an entity called Ra. It teaches that all life forms are essentially part of the same divine consciousness or creator, and that separation is an illusion. To quote Ra, "The second of the mental disciplines is acceptance of the completeness within your consciousness. It's not for a being of polarity in the physical consciousness to pick and choose among attributes, thus building the roles that cause blockages and confusions in the already distorted mind complex." In other words, acceptance of our light and our dark aspects and how both can serve us. As an example, you might have a belief that being assertive is negative and selfish, and so you allow others to walk all over you and take advantage of you, and then you get triggered by those who use their assertiveness, and then this causes a seething resentment within you, when in reality, assertiveness can be a positive attribute. We notice our shadow when something or someone triggers us. The feelings and emotions can be so intense that we feel we have no control over them. We compulsively act out, or we allow it to continue festering inside. So how did we get here? Let's go over some of the main points. We create a persona. A persona is simply the masks we wear to fit into society and be accepted. It's created based on our beliefs of what is good and what is bad, which may or may not be true. It's based on our programming and conditioning from our environment and society. For example, it's our gender, what we do for work, and our social status. Then we have the psyche. A general definition is the soul, mind, spirit, or invisible animating entity which occupies the physical body. Jung describes it as the totality of all psychic processes, conscious as well as unconscious, so what we're aware of and what we're not aware of. The law of polarity is the principle that everything has two poles, such as good and evil or love and hate. Everything in the universe has an opposite. The polarized mind is the fixation on one point of view to the utter exclusion of other points of view. Ra, in the Law of One, says that choice is integral in polarization of consciousness. The concepts of both polarization and choice suggest that there is an opposing attribute which is not being expressed. So to choose one thing over another, there must be one thing we're not choosing. To polarize in any context means that there must be an opposing polarity. Individuation is the process by which an individual becomes unique. Our self-identity is who we perceive ourselves to be based on early conditioning, and this is our ego. By young adulthood, our perception of ourselves is set in place. We now have a construct that we identify as me or I. And Jung describes individuation as the development of psychological individual as being distinct from the general collective psychology. An individual goes from being a fragmented piece to a unique whole. In the Law of One, it's described as the path of becoming a conscious co-creator. And to put it simply, your eyes have been opened to all the conditioning and programming, and you're now on a path of clearing these distortions and finding your true individuality. Okay, so what are some of the ways we can work with the shadow? The most obvious options are with a therapist, a guru, or spiritual advisor, or you can go it on your own using your journaling and meditation. Some less obvious ways are past life regression or hypnosis, using our dreams, or by unknowingly going through it by the seat of your pants, like in my case. Nowadays, it's popular. You can buy a book about the shadow that includes prompts or questions that you can use, especially about your inner child, and then go about working with the shadow on your own with journaling. Journaling or writing classes that use stream of consciousness writing can be very effective at reaching the depth of emotion within. It all depends on how deep do you want to go or need to go, and how committed to the process are you. Doing shadow work can be like opening Pandora's box. It all depends on the individual, which is why it's so important when determining how you want to go about working with the shadow. My experience was very unorthodox, as I'm sure it was for many others. When my kundalini was spontaneously awakened, I had no idea what it was, and it took me some time to discover it. And once I did, I would use a meditation every night that took me through each chakra. While a lot was going on that I didn't fully understand, I was introduced to the pendulum and automatic writing. So what I thought was just a lark turned out to be an intense journey into my psyche. Automatic writing, as with working with the shadow, can bring out some lower aspects or energy that you were in no way conscious of or you were ignoring. It can bring out or present as different aspects of the psyche that can be quite disturbing. It was like having a direct conversation with my shadow. And not all aspects were negative, there were also some positive ones. I found the whole experience fascinating. And while it was disturbing at times, I managed to use it effectively with the shadow. I managed to come through unscathed, other than the pain, usual ups and downs, and some fallout of a kundalini dark night. But I accepted it as a spiritual process only, and still do. Since then, I have provided readings for those that did indeed need more conventional assistance, shall we say. So this is why I caution that when embarking on a journey of working with the shadow, just be aware and be careful. The 3 lower chakras or energy centers are most associated with the shadow. An unrealized shadow may be seen as blockages in these areas. The shadow will be most easily seen through projection. When we don't see or accept something in ourselves, we judge and call it out in others. But once we realize and accept these aspects in ourselves, we can recognize and clear the blockages. Even when we realize and recognize the shadow, we're not eliminating it. It can be integrated and accepted, but it's still present as we continue working up through the chakras and begin work in polarization. Jung described the development of the lower energy centers as follows. If a plant is to unfold its specific nature to the full, it must first be able to grow in the soil in which it is planted. He emphasized that we must balance the lower energy centers before beginning work on the higher centers. If we're successful in maintaining basic functioning in these centers, we may realize the concept of unconditional love applied to other selves and self, potentiate blue ray, and begin our process of individuation. So the blue ray is associated with the throat chakra. And quoting from the Law of One, the blue ray is the ray of free communication with self and with other self. For the first time, it's energy outgoing as well as inpouring. So those blocked in this area may have difficulty in grasping the spirit-mind complexes of its own entity, and further difficulty in expressing such understandings of self. Entities blocked in this area may have difficulties in accepting communication from other mind-body-spirit complexes. This is what Ra calls humans, basically, the mind-body-spirit complex. In other words, we need to be honest in our communication with ourselves before we can be honest with communication with others. The blue ray, or fifth chakra, and honesty go hand in hand. A simple and effective way of working with the shadow is called self-inquiry. Self-inquiry is putting a mirror in front of you and asking you to look. Just sitting quietly, preparing yourself to communicate with your deepest inner self. You could use prompted questions, or what I did was track my own triggers. There are a couple of good spiritual advisors you may want to check out, and they are called, one is the Loner Wolf, which provides information and techniques regarding the shadow, and another one is Neutrino Astrology, which is much more than just astrology, and you'll learn a lot about the shadow. And I'll put both of these links in my description box. So what I did was look at the trigger, how it happened, and how it made me feel, and then I would turn it around to me rather than looking at the other person or situation. I would ask myself what was behind the feeling, and then I would just keep going deeper and deeper. So here's a really simple example. Say you decide to treat a friend for lunch, and they say, "Oh, I'll catch you next time." But next time they forget, or maybe not, and it triggers a negative emotion in you. Putting your friend's actions aside, or non-action, look at why did you pay in the first place? Did you pay expecting reciprocation, or pay with a genuine intent of giving or sharing? Were you coming from the ego, trying to impress? Did you offer to pay to earn attention and love from this friend? Or maybe you have a fear of not enough money, and then you could dig deeper into that. It could go as far back as your childhood or some other lifetime. We all typically have an intent behind everything we do, and we need to look at what the intent is behind our action, as it's usually something for ourselves. From there, we can ask why we had this intention, and just keep asking and going deeper and deeper with full honesty. Writing everything out can be helpful, as is writing out your dreams. Keeping a journal of your dreams is another method of doing the work of looking within. You'll start to understand the recurring dreams, and you'll be able to look back at dreams you may have forgotten, and they might make sense now. There are even more ways you can work with the psyche and the shadow, depending on what resonates or works for you. Something I have used for years and have built a relationship with is the I Ching. The I Ching is an ancient Chinese oracle that was used for thousands of years by the Chinese as an aid in decision-making and predicting the future. It can also be a great tool for those of us on the path of self-realization. Using coins, you ask a question, then cast a hexagram, which produces the relating answer or answers. There are many translations of the hexagrams available. The I Ching is a straightforward, no-nonsense messenger that has never led me astray and is always spot on. It can be a little hard to swallow at times as you face the truth of yourself. It can also be difficult to learn as the translations and language are archaic, and it can come across a little harsh at times, maybe a bit like how traditional tarot can sometimes be. How you want to work with the shadow and how deep you're willing to go is up to you, but the outcome will be liberating and freeing. As with anything of this nature, it's not for the faint of heart and takes getting out of your own way with a great willingness to get to the root of your shadow with love and understanding and without a condemnation of yourself. Don't forget that every feeling we have, every emotion, every experience is meant to serve us. Remember, you're not alone, as we're all one collective consciousness and are subject to the conditions of this construct and what we're here to do in this earthly existence. So you're not the only one with a shadow, and what you will find will not be unique, but it will be personal for you. Remember, we're just passing through. This is just a moment in time, albeit a very significant time. So go forward with the shadow work, treading carefully with utmost honesty of where you're at and what is needed to guide you through the process. And from my heart to yours, you have it in you.